Hey there, Amanda with the Happy Homestead. We're going to continue today with our sourdough series, and I'm going to show you how to make a boule. A boule is a French word, and it's just a fancy word for a free-form loaf, and you buy these in the store. I'm sure you've seen them. They're the big, round, beautiful loaves of sourdough. Sometimes it's more of an oval shape, and that's what we're going to do today. The best part about this is that if you remember our sandwich loaf, and link above to that video, this process is exactly the same. So I'm using the same ratio, 500 grams of flour, 350 grams of liquid, sea salt, in between, I think I say, I don't know, around 75 grams of starter. I kind of, go around that number, but it's the same ratio. And I'm gonna make two today, one oval and one round, so you can see the difference. The difference in this process between the sandwich loaf is we're actually not gonna be baking this in a sandwich loaf tin, right? We're going to be proofing this in a banneton. And I'll show you those when we get to that point. And then we're gonna be baking it in a Dutch oven, like in a cast iron Dutch oven, a pan with a lid. And it creates this beautiful effect for the loaf to rise and break out, and it's gorgeous. That's what I'm gonna show you how to do today, because having this skill will be worth it, especially for holidays, special occasions, gatherings, right? Where you need to bring something, bringing that beautiful loaf of homemade sourdough, you're going to wow people. Let's get started. So I kind of have everything out here messy, but here's my starters. So I fed them this morning. This is Giuseppe. This is Giada. I named her Giada. They're both from Italy. And so you can see that they have doubled, so they are ready, right? So when you're beginning this process, just like before, make sure your starter is fed and doubled and active and healthy. Got two bowls, one for oval, one for round. Doesn't really matter which one's which. We're gonna get the same ratio of everything in each. So we're gonna start with the 500 grams of flour. Now, actually, there is one more change I want to tell you. When you are doing the boule, you want them to puff up and they break out in the pan and they become this beautiful loaf. And it is really hard to achieve that with strictly whole wheat flour. I have tried. It's just dense, it's heavier, it's just harder to do. So what we're going to do today is we're going to split this with whole wheat and all-purpose. And so I'm doing 250 grams of each. Okay, that is 250 grams of hard red wheat. And remember, I bought that from Azure on my last order. And I want to use that first before I start grinding my own again. And so I have 250 grams of whole wheat flour, and now I'm going to do 250 grams of all-purpose flour. You can just use all-purpose flour. That is okay too. I like to use the whole wheat because it gives you a heartier flavor, but it also just adds a little bit more nutrition, right? But all-purpose is perfectly fine too. In fact, a lot of the loaves you find in the store, unless it specifically says whole wheat, they're made with all-purpose. Okay. So this is 250 whole wheat, 250 all-purpose. Let's go to the next bowl, and we're gonna do the same exact thing. And you'll see I kind of put them separate, like this one's off to the side. That way if I need to take some away, I can easily do that without digging into the all-purpose. Okay. So we got our flours ready. Now let's weigh out our liquid, and again we're going to do 350. I'm using whey. Again, you've probably heard me talk about this in the last video. You can use water or whey. I have whey on hand from draining some of our yogurt that I make, so I'm just gonna use that up. Now, because we are using all-purpose, it's more refined, right? It requires less moisture than a whole wheat or whole grain flour would. And so you may find that as you measure out 350 and then mix it in, you may find you need to sprinkle a little more flour in, and that's okay, right? If it's too wet. All right, so we're gonna put in 75 grams of starter. Close enough. I'm gonna mix that up. I'm gonna add in my Redmond sea salt. I'm gonna do this so you can see what I mean if it's too wet. You should have a feel for this from making your other loaf, right? That it comes together really nicely. It's not too sticky and not too dry. So, and that just comes with practice, so just keep at it, but you will start to feel it. And because we're using a little all-purpose here, you'll also notice throughout the pulling process that it's going to pull so much easier too. All right, I don't think I actually need to add anything. This seems pretty good. Came together pretty well. It's not too sticky on my hands. Yep, so this one is good. Let's go to the next one. I'm going to put the salt in and mix it up a little bit. Forgot to do that on the last one. All right, 350 grams. Make it a mess. And I use Giada for this one, only because I'm trying to use them both, so one of them doesn't get more love than another. That's great. 76, that's good. All right, the same process here. This one feels a little sticky. You can see my hands, the difference, but there's still a lot of flour pieces down here that haven't gotten incorporated in. So I'm just trying to put the sticky sides right in that and really scoop up that loose flour in bits. Yeah, I actually need a little more liquid. So you can kind of see that even as I'm going through this, right, it's just not getting that up. So I'm just gonna add a tad bit more whey. You can kind of see it's getting it up now. Much better. Okay, these two are ready. I'm gonna cover these up just like we would before. Okay, so just like before, I'm gonna leave these sit for about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, and then do my first set of pulls. And I'm going to do about 4 sets of pulls. Now again, go back to that sandwich video if you didn't watch that yet to learn this process. This really hasn't changed from that video. The only thing that changed is we added some all-purpose in and substituted that for some of the whole wheat. But other than that, going about your sourdough loaf, everything's the same. It's about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So I usually start my loaves anywhere between 2 and 4 o'clock and then do my pulls and the last set of pulls. And then I put it in either the banneton or the sandwich loaf right before I go to bed, put it in the refrigerator, let it proof overnight and bake the next day. So this process is the same. So keep that in mind. But I'll show you one set of pulls when I do it. I'm not going to show you all 4, but I'll do one of them and you'll get to see like how pliable and how much easier the dough is to pull anyways comparatively. And then I'll show you when we put it in the banneton tonight. It's 6:30, so it's been 4.5 hours since you first saw me put the dough together. I've already done, I think, 1 or 2 pulls so far. So let's get another one done. I'm going to show you what it looks like. It's very pliable. You don't want to be harsh. You want to be very gentle. You're just pulling and putting it back in the center. You want to do about a full rotation and then put it back. Let's do the other one. And the dough, again, it shouldn't be overly sticky. It should come away from your bowl pretty easily. It should have come together nicely. Like you can just tell that the dough is coming together better. Okay. It's almost 9 o'clock. I'm gonna wait about 1 more hour until we do our last pull and then put them in the banneton. But I wanted to show you this part about the banneton. So you've heard me say that word. No, it is not the United Colors of Benetton, if anyone remembers that. But similar word, banneton. And they look like these. So I have 2 shapes here. I've got the oval and the round. And you can find these online and I'll link below the ones that I've purchased on Amazon. And they are great, but it does take a little bit of a learning curve and that's what I want to show you. So when you get them, they are going to be beautifully clean and nothing in the cracks or crusty. And then as you start using them, they're gonna get crusty and there's gonna be stuff in them, and that's okay. You do not want to clean it. You don't ever want to clean this. So what you're doing is you're putting your dough in here and you're letting it proof overnight. And that's how you get these beautiful rings, by the way, that you see on some of those boules, is through the banneton. But because dough can be sticky, you do not want it to stick to your banneton. I have had that happen and it is a mess. And truth be told, it'll probably happen at least once. It's just a whole part of the learning curve. So what you do when you first get your banneton is you are going to sprinkle water in it. And I'm gonna do this, but I'm just gonna demonstrate it first. You're gonna actually sprinkle water in it and kind of wet it a little bit. And honestly, if it's a brand new banneton, I would probably even rinse it like under the faucet, like with just nice cold water, and get it wet. And then maybe towel dry it a little bit, and then take rice flour. And the reason you don't want to use regular flour, any kind of wheat flour, is because it has gluten, right? And so the dough is gonna stick right to it and stick to your banneton. So what you're doing is you're wetting it and then putting rice flour all over it, sprinkling of the rice flour, and the dough will not stick to the rice flour. So that way the next day when you dump it out, it won't stick and you've got this beautiful loaf. But I'm gonna demonstrate how I do this with my bannetons. Now, I don't have to do it every time now because they've been used. They're a little bit crusty in here. There's plenty of rice flour, even still stuck in some of these cracks. I don't have to do this every time. However, I still do it probably every 4 to 5 times. So let me show you. Okay, so I'm not actually gonna rinse my banneton in here because it's not brand new. I've used it multiple times. I don't need to do that, but that is exactly what I'd recommend if you have a brand new one. And just a little trickle like that, like nothing major. But I am going just to kind of spray some water in. It's just enough to start, you know, coating some of those edges again. And you want to do this like a day or so before you bake with your banneton. Now I'm going to be putting these in quickly, so within an hour. So that's why I didn't really soak it. And you're going to put some of the rice flour in. And just coat it. Go around the edges and coat it. Now your dough most likely will not come all the way up to this top edge, but certainly in the bottom middle and the bottom 2/3, you want to get nice and coated. That looks good. I'll just pour the excess in that one. And so see how that looks perfect. Now I don't expect my dough to stick to that at all. Let's hope. Right? Like, let's hope. All right, let's do this one. So I just, for my rice flour, I have the mock mill, right? So I just grind up a little rice and that's how I get my rice flour. You can easily go buy a small package of rice flour at the store. The whole purpose, again, is just to use something with no gluten content so that the dough cannot stick to your banneton. It creates a nice little barrier. Okay, and that one looks good too. And so they're ready. Let's talk about proofing quick too, while I have the chance. So just like our sandwich loaf, we're proofing our dough in the refrigerator. We're in April, right? And so the weather's getting warmer. If this were in the dead of winter, I may consider proofing it on my kitchen counter, depending upon the temperature in my house. But honestly, if you're just starting out, proof it in their fridge. It's just a nice foolproof way to make sure you're not overproofing your dough. And again, you will overproof your dough at one point in time. It's just all part of the learning experience. It will happen. And you'll start understanding what that means, right? So when you pour it out of your banneton, it's either going to retain its shape really nicely and almost have a little bit of a spring in it if you put your finger in it. Whereas if it's overproofed and you pour it out, it's going to go just start spreading. And that has happened to me multiple times. Mind you, there's nothing wrong with the bread. It still tastes delicious. But I can't tell you how many loaves of bread I have made that look like flip-flops. Just flat. And we've made pizzas out of them or croutons or breadcrumbs, whatever. So it will happen, but you'll start to understand the difference and that fine line between perfectly proofed and overproofed. And so I proof in the refrigerator. It just really helps minimize the line crossing right into that overproofing. And so I usually go about 12 to 15 hours, right? So this is gonna go in around 10 or 10:30 tonight in the refrigerator. And then I will check it in the morning when I get up and I should see it have risen, right? So if we're in our banneton here, and when I put it in tonight, I'll just kind of make a mental note, you know, like what line is it at in the banneton? So in the morning I can see, has it risen? And it should, it really should. It's not doubling like your starter would, right? But it will have grown. That's the whole point of the proofing, is that the yeast are digesting everything and creating those gassy bubbles that you see in sourdough. And so it should have grown. And I may even touch it a little bit to see how springy it is, but I'm not baking first thing in the morning. Mornings are hectic enough, and so the last thing I need to do is worry about baking a sourdough loaf. So I'll just check it, but I'll leave it in the refrigerator, and then I'll bake it when I'm ready, and that's usually around lunchtime. If I needed to wait until later in the day, then I can do that, but I would absolutely leave it in the refrigerator the entire time. I'll just tell you that if you wait too long in the day, you do risk the overproofing. I say anywhere between the 12 to 15 hour mark is usually a safe bet. It is 10:30 at night. I'm ready to go to bed. So let's put our sourdough to bed as well. Let's get this pulled one last time and put in a little ball. We're gonna create some tension and then get it in our banneton. Okay, I'm gonna start with the round loaf, so the round banneton, and all I'm gonna do is gently take it out of the bowl. I don't wanna ruin all of the beautiful bubbles that have already been created inside. So again, you wanna be careful, but I am gonna do one last pull here. And then I'm going to start creating some tension. So I'm flipping it over, and all that means when you hear people say create tension is that we want the top here to become kind of taut and tight without pulling, without breaking any of these bubbles, right? And so all we do by doing that is rolling it. So you just kind of roll it, and it helps create that tension on the top. And when you bake it, that tension, then it bursts out, and that's how you get that beautiful loaf. Doesn't take much time. I do one more, and then I put it in the banneton, face down. So this will go down. Gently put it in. Okay, let's do our oval. And I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm actually just gonna do my pulls right here. You just don't want to damage the dough. You want to be very careful. So I'm going to be doing the same sort of thing here to create that tension, but I'm going to try to do it in a more of an oval shape. Like that. That's perfect. And so now I'm going to get it in. Like that. Okay, I'm going to cover these back up with my beeswax here, and I'm going to find a spot and put these in the refrigerator. So I want you to kind of take a mental note of where this is, right? Where it falls within the banneton. And then when we look in the morning, we'll get to see how much it's grown. Good morning. It is 8:30, almost 8:30. So it's been almost 10 hours, and I just took them out of the refrigerator just to look and show you. But here's the round one. So it's expanded a little bit. And here is the oval. Ooh, the oval has also expanded a little bit. Can you see that? Okay, so these are going to go back into the refrigerator. Take a drink. Just take a drink. This is why I don't bake first thing in the morning, because there's a lot going on. So these are gonna go back in the refrigerator, and I'll check on them in probably another 3 hours or so. See you then. Okay, it is a little after 11, about quarter after 11. So these have been in the refrigerator for just about 13, almost 13 hours. I think they're ready. They haven't grown since I showed you much this morning, but I can tell that when I poke it a little bit, there is a bit of spring, right? It's not so soft like the dough we were working last night, but there is a bit of a spring in it. And I can also tell that there are bubbles, right? If you it's hard to see here, but you can tell that there's some bubbles in here and the sourdough is doing its thing. So I take the covers off. I already have my oven preheating. Now, I put my oven at 425 degrees Fahrenheit. I already have my Dutch ovens in the oven. So it's similar like when you're baking a pizza crust, right? And you want to have your pizza stone hot. You preheat it in the oven with the oven. Same principle here. You want your Dutch ovens hot. And what happens is when you put that lid on and then put them back in, it creates this beautiful steaming kind of convection effect. And that's how you get the beautiful loaves. So yes, you can bake in your oven without a lid, without a Dutch oven. You just may not get the same type of loaf, right? The same kind of, I don't want to say explosion, right? But it really kind of puffs out and pops out, and you'll see that. You can do it on a pizza stone if that's all you have. But I would recommend, if you can borrow a Dutch oven from somebody, then use it, and you'll probably start having more success as well. So I have 2 in the oven, one more oval, one more round, and then we'll bake these appropriately as in each. But what I'm gonna do to pop them out of the banneton is I just take a cutting board. This is a piece of parchment paper. It looks dirty, but it's not. I'm just reusing it. And then I will place this on top of the banneton, flip it over, and then I actually put the parchment paper in the Dutch oven. So it cooks on the parchment in the Dutch oven, and then when it's done, you can easily lift it back out. It just makes that whole process cleaner and easier. So I actually get another piece of parchment paper here. But that's what I'm gonna do. And you're gonna see me score it. I'm just talking while the oven's preheating. I don't wanna do anything until it's preheated. But once I flip it over, I'm going to take a razor blade and score it a little bit. And I'm gonna do one line down the middle, and that's where it really kind of helps pop out. And then I might do some like decorative kind of leaf things too. So I'm gonna go get another piece of parchment paper. I think this is gonna be preheated very shortly, and we'll get to do this. Okay, you heard that. Here we go. So let's start with this one. I'm gonna flip this over. And gently, you don't wanna slam it down. You're just gently flipping it back and gently lift up your banneton. And hopefully it comes out nicely. There we go. So I'm just gonna score with my razor. I'm going about 1/4 inch deep. And I'll just do a couple another lines here. And you should see as I'm doing this, right, it's still retaining its shape. Be careful with your razor blades. I think I just cut myself. It's retaining its shape pretty well. So let me go get this Dutch oven and we'll get this in. You don't want to rush, but you don't want to be working too slow either. That one popped out even easier. You see how it's retaining its shape nicely. So I'm cooking these for 40 minutes. And then at 40 minutes, I'll check it, and if I need to take the lid off for a little bit, I will, to brown the top. I am so pleased with how these came out. Look at how beautiful that is. And this one, the oval one, also the rice flour is falling off. I am so happy with them. So I'll let you know when I first took them out, after the 40 minutes was up, I just wanted to leave them in a little bit longer. So I actually set the timer for 8 more minutes, and I took the lid off, and that's what helped to get it a little bit more brown, right, on the top. So I did 48 minutes at 425 degrees. And again, in the Dutch oven for 40 minutes, and then the lid off of the Dutch oven for the last 8 minutes. So work with your oven, kind of play around with it and see what works. But I would start with the 40 minutes and then check it from there. And now you know how to make the most beautiful sourdough boules. Again, imagine bringing this to a dinner party, to a gathering, to an event, especially when you're like, oh my goodness, I have to go somewhere and I don't know what to do. As long as you have one day in advance to think about it, you can get this done. Thank you for joining me on this sourdough boule journey. Stay healthy, stay well. Bye-bye.